3, 2, 1. Hi everybody, and welcome to this video attached to the paper entitled A Very Simple View-Dependent Terrain Rendering Algorithm whose performance and memory usage is independent of the terrain size and which is all very short and simple. The ever first paper featuring quite a few procedurally generated figures where the procedure is written with small PHP scripts and the graphical output like colored triangles, lines and colored small squares are done with SVG graphics, scalable vector graphics. And when the procedure to generate the figure is a bit lengthy, C++ programs are used to generate the figure. And a few of the programs attached to the paper in form of C++ source code, easy to compile and run. Let's do this to you so that you can see it directly. Try it and maybe also modify it. Very fine. This is a raw footage showing the simplified variant of the rendering system presented in the paper, in which my fourth theorem on polygonal surface approximation is used to enforce always a legal block set according to how we called it in the paper. And so this variant is very simple, but it cheats, so to speak, but does the same things as the full algorithm and casts a very interesting light in general on the properties of polygonally approximated surfaces, so to speak. Very fine. So let's see the program running and see how a few really funny glitches happen because of the way this simplified variant of the algorithm cheats on how to arrive, how to enforce the presence of a legal block set in which two blocks which find themselves side by side can be or one half as big as the other. I mean, the side of it can be half as big as the neighbor one, or twice as big, or clearly as long as the neighbor block's side. And that's it. So let's see the raw footage and let me add some occasional comments to it. Have lots of fun. End of record. Three, two, one, go. In this simplified version of the terrain rendering algorithm, there are only 3 stages of operation as opposed to the original version in which there are 4. Two pixels of tolerance now. There is 1 stage of detail addition, 1 of detail subtraction or deletion or removal, however you prefer calling it, and 1 stage in which the blocks are triangulated. In this simplified version, the enforcement of the passage from a legal set of blocks, as it is referred to in the paper, to another legal block set is performed in stage 1 and stage 2. But, however, the number of operations it does is quite low, and so it doesn't add so much heaviness to so much weight to the overall procedure. Okay, let's fly around a bit. Now, please try to pay attention to what's going on with the detail here, because we are going to say some really interesting facts about what the simplified version does differently from the whole original version as to the final visual results and final, let's say, approximation of the surface we are visualizing. Very fine. But before proceeding, of course, let me say that because the overall procedure is made only of 3 stages, and because the operation which enforces the passage from a legal block set to another legal block set is not very heavy, we have an overall faster procedure, so that we have more frequent changes in the level of detail. That is, more frequent changes in the block set, which, once triangulated, produces a polygonalized or triangularized surface, or in other words, a polygonal approximation of a surface which is our terrain in this case. And since it's faster, we have, well, beside the fact that we have we easily achieve 40 or even more frames per second, on average we can also have quite a lot of blocks. "30 frames per second, we can go also to 4,000 blocks, and if it accidentally goes to 5,000 or 6,000, the slowdown is not so bad. And all these features are very important for what we are going to see now. So, we see right at the moment something different in this than in the original version. That the way the distribution of more and less detailed areas changes sometimes has some glitches. For example, here we should have detail, but it just doesn't go. We have sometimes these funny glitches that or too much detail suddenly appears in an area where before there wasn't much detail, and in other occasions the level of detail in some areas of the terrain apparently just is stuck up. So even if we know there is some important information, the addition of level of detail just doesn't want to start. Okay, so sometimes we see that let's say, raise in the amount of detail in a certain area of the terrain is that they throw some sorts of cascades. Once there doesn't seem to be anything big deal, and then suddenly a lot of detail starts to be added. Other times, in other occasions, instead, what happens is the contrary, that the apparel of detail just seems to be lazy, literally lazy. And well, that's a feature deriving from the fact that this alternate version, this simplified version of the algorithm, literally cheats on cheats in the way it enforces the presence of a legal block set, or more precisely the fact that we go from a legal block set to another legal block set. And for example, here we can see this glitch that here the detail is just fine. It's the changing the level of detail is smooth and everything, while here, even if we know there is some important detail, it just seems to be stuck up. While when we turn around the camera a bit, suddenly the detail starts to appear, starts to be added as a sort of cascade which starts very quickly, and then it's over in a moment. And we have these pretty funny glitches or just visual phenomena in this simplified version. But the simplified version has some very interesting properties on its own, and that's very important. Beside the fact that the simplified version is simpler, and in fact in the paper we first introduce the simplified version, and then, since it's much easier to understand, we just change something, we add another stage, and so on. We don't want to spoiler the paper too much or say too much here. Synchro. Okay. Let's do a fast run. Even if this simplified version has an contour friendliness as it is referred to in the paper and in various video materials I did on the original algorithm, is much inferior to the contour friendliness of the original algorithm. This is not necessarily a bad feature, because the way this simplified version manages the detail addition sometimes produces these glitches, which can be funny actually. And instead, those cases in which the detail just seems to be, the level of detail in some area of the terrain just seems to be stuck up in some area, those situations can actually be managed with some simple tricks. Did you see it? Sometimes it's sufficient to turn the camera a bit right and left, up and down, and we trigger the cascade through which the nearly right amount of detail is added. It has really some quite interesting properties, and as I said earlier, sometimes these glitches, glitches so to speak, are actually funny. In some kinds of applications, these things actually wouldn't even qualify as glitches. And of course, through some simple tricks, it can be contained even if not fully corrected. And of course, don't forget that the main advantage of this variant is, beside its simplicity and so feasibility for documentation, tutorials, and well, more or less involved material on rendering algorithms in general, is its speed, and an application in which it's mandatory that it be extremely lightweight, computationally speaking. This is good, actually. This can be an invaluable resource as opposed to the original version, which is a bit heavier. And as a last thing, I'd like to mention that the only stage in which some parallelism is used to enhance the overall speed of the algorithm is stage 3, in which we triangulate the blocks. There is used multi-threading, and 2 threads of executions are ran. And very good. In the other 2 stages, actually, parallelization is not really required. Of course, even without multi-threading in the triangulation part, it goes fine anyway. And for those who may consider it without multi-threading, yes, it's worth being tried out. It still gives good results.